Chapter 18 to 20. What was I doing again? Wondered Rimuru. Ah yes, using universal perception to see when the lizardmen would arrive. So why is it that I am being dragged in two different directions? In my human form. After praising Shuna's work in the clothing sector and adding Xian as his secretary once more, he had decided to determine if the lizardmen would be arriving sooner or later. It looked like they would arrive at the same time. Still, he told Soe to be on the lookout, and expected him to notify him at a moment's notice. This focus on future affairs led him to completely forget about the current issue. Shuna and Xian, are you seriously telling me they had a cooking competition? When did Shuna even have the time? Wondered Rimuru. Rimuru was currently sitting at what would eventually be the meeting room, being dragged by Xian and Shuna in two separate directions. Both wanted him to eat what they had made. Rimuru eyed the food that Shuna had made, on the left side of the table. It was quite simple, just a bit of stew with star-shaped carrots. He wasn't worried about that. He then eyed the food that Xian had made, on the right side of the table. Black, purple and bluish gluey slush oozing out of a bowl. That was what he was worried about. And Xian's reaction to the results. Benimaru had dipped the moment he was allowed to. Soe was currently scouting the area. That just left both Hakuro and Shizu, both of whom looking in a different direction. Hakuro was casually sipping tea and hiding his presence, while Shizu was sweating bullets, unsure if she was supposed to interfere, given the nature of Rimuru's predicament. Rimuru was at least glad that she decided to stay and watch him die, if Gobta didn't hurry up and show up. Lord Rimuru, if you may. Lord Rimuru, I insist that. Please stop. Thought Rimuru. Where is Gobta when you need him? Stalling for time, he grabbed both dishes and placed them side by side, right as Seal warned him that Gobta was arriving. Master, perhaps it would be better if you gave Gobta a larger portion this time. To both balance out the deliciousness that he will taste from Shuna's porridge, as well as develop his poison resistance further. Perfect idea, Seal. I was too soft on him last time, and spoiled him a lot. This time around, I'm going to be harsher on my subordinates. After all, the harsher the training, the stronger the student. Underneath Rimuru's strained face was a true dragon planning the near demise of one of his subordinates, convincing himself that it was all for that subordinate's sake. Rimuru, you know what, never mind, you do this all the time with me. Even Veldora felt the need to pity Gobta and say his 2 cents. Needless to say, Gobta was given an extra portion, giving Rimuru the necessary excuse to dismiss Xian and Shuna, and get them to focus on other tasks besides cooking. He did, however, tell Shuna that she was not the one responsible for Gobta's reaction. Ah yes, before I forget, thought Rimuru, before reaching out to Benimaru through thought communication. Hey Benimaru, you are officially responsible for restraining Xian and preventing her from cooking. Good luck. What, my lord? Rimuru was not compromising on this. He may be a reincarnator and a regressor, but he absolutely would not want to deal with Xian's cooking, at least not at this point. So he might as well punish Benimaru just like last time. Yes, a flawed line of reasoning, but one that would work nonetheless. Deep in thought, Rimuru did not realize that another potential cook was approaching him from behind. Shizu realized that she had had an incorrect perception of Rimuru, both when they initially met and after the Ifrit fiasco. Originally, she thought he was a bit naive, kind, and willing to forge connections. Yet those impressions were thrown away immediately when she realized that he had suffered loss, just like her. That impression developed even further during that faithful conversation. When he had told her to live, she had disagreed immediately. Ridiculous, she had thought. I killed her. I ruined her. Why do I deserve forgiveness? Yet the more he had spoken, the more she realized that she had been wrong. Those that live will not know if those that died have forgiven them, unless you speak with them face to face. The real reason for one's guilt is the self-imposed blame placed upon oneself. In other words, she had blamed herself, and Rimuru had declared that it was up to her to forgive herself and live. She couldn't do that at the time. So she had decided to live to help him. And now, she had decided to save him when the opportunity arose. After all of that, she had assumed that she knew what type of person Rimuru was. She had thought that he was somewhat awkward, but always knew what to do. Someone who was upset and hesitant to make true connections in his fear to lose them again, yet did so anyway. Seeing him struggling to deal with certain subordinates surprised her. Who knew that some situations would cause him to be at a loss, while he tried his best to search for an answer? Then again, Xian did manage to create that. She questioned whether Rimuru was actually sane or not, letting that woman into the kitchen. Perhaps he got distracted and Xian had taken that opportunity. Then what about the others? The ogres didn't stop her, and Shizu could tell they were somewhat afraid. But, it couldn't be that hard to stop Xian, could it? And what about Shuna? It was clear to her that Shuna was a competent cook. Then why let Xian into the kitchen? Pride. Her eyes wandered to Gobta that was currently on the floor, light purple foam coming out of his throat, mouth and nose. I'm just glad Rimuru-san didn't have to eat that, thought Shizu, sighing with a strained smile. I really need to ask Rimuru-san about it. She then walked right beside Rimuru, before softly calling out to him. Rimuru-san, whispered Shizu, cutting Rimuru out of his thoughts. Yay, whispered Rimuru, now away from both Shuna and Xian. Was that really food? She asked, quietly and worriedly, all the while eyeing the last direction in which the two cooks had left. No, at least not Xian's. Thank God. Is that dish something that you usually eat? No, yelled Rimuru, very quietly. I'm not suicidal. Rimuru looked at Shizu in disbelief, before quickly looking away, feeling guilty. After all, how would Shizu know about his dynamic with his subordinates? Shizu, on the other hand, immediately assumed that she had upset Rimuru with her words. Eyeing the now empty kitchen, an idea then popped in Shizu's head. It had been a long time since she went into a kitchen to cook, but both her parents and her students liked her cooking when they tried it all those years ago. Also, maybe cooking would cheer Rimuru up. I can make some actual food if you want to eat something. She then offered, wondering if Rimuru would trust her to make something edible. Rimuru was surprised, which showed on his face for a split second. However, he then smiled, before answering her positively. I'll take up that offer then, Shizu. Sorry Shuna, sorry Xian, I do miss your good cooking, from the both of you. But Shizu's offer is too tempting. It's been a while since I could relax like this. Following Rimuru's words, Shizu had immediately left for the kitchen, picking up a knife that reminded her of the Japanese knives that her mother had wielded in the kitchen. Meanwhile, leaning back in his chair, Rimuru thought he could finally have a few days of peace before the Orc Lord. A moment where he could finally lower his guard. Listening to the rhythmic and quiet taps of a knife on a wooden cutting board, as well as the slight humming of a fellow otherworlder, Rimuru smiled, letting his mind wander. Surely there's nothing I am forgetting, right? Why am I feeling so uncomfortable right now? Master, sighed Seal. What? Oi, Rimuru, the actual lizard, not me, added Veldora, facepalming himself. How could you forget? Oh, damn it Gabiru, Rimuru, a second chance that won't be wasted, fate of a lizard man, discussion about the future, and an surprise guest. www.wattpad.com. Gabiru, Gabiru, Gabiru. The high-pitched screams and squeals of the green lizard men rang throughout the goblin village. Yay no, I am not dealing with this today. It's been so long that I completely forgot how stupid, brainless, foolish, idiosyncratic Gabiru was when we just met him. Rimuru, standing in front of this sorry excuse of a performance, was mentally berating himself for completely overlooking the fact that he had to listen to it all over again. My lord, how should we deal with this fool? Asked Benimaru, who was standing right beside him. He had asked this question through thought communication, his voice underlaid with contempt and anger. Just ignore the damn idiot. And get Gobta over here. Let him deal with it. Rimuru, quickly wanting to get out of this mess, immediately instructed them to contact Gobta. However, Benimaru dashed his hopes of a quick resolution to the entire farce. My lord, Gobta is still out of commission. Yes, Gobta was indeed still unconscious. Thanks to having two very strict teachers training him and the young goblins, along with the food that Xian made. Well then wake him up. I already have an antidote in case he is still suffering. Master, Gobta has already received the skill poison resistance. Perfect. Benimaru then swiftly and discreetly turned around and left, once he received the antidote from Rimuru. Rimuru, for his part, completely ignored the offer of servitude from Gabiru. Yay right, not happening. He had already directed Rigard to take control of the situation, and continued to ignore the conversation. Rimuru then eyed Shizu, who was staring blankly at Gabiru. He noticed that she was trying to understand what she was even seeing. Rimuru-san, she asked, with her recently acquired thought transmission that she received from Seal. Don't bother trying to understand the idiot. Rimuru answered. He then turned his focus to Xian. Oi, Xian, control yourself. The secretary in question was milliseconds away from punting Gabiru across the entire Jura forest. However, After being notified, she immediately made a mournful face, before complaining away through thought transmission. Ignoring the now ranting Xian, Rimuru then finally turned to Gabiru, focusing on the conversation for once, while also reading his mind to understand his thoughts. This was done to plan for the future, however. Much stronger than you, finished Gabiru, before looking in a certain direction. Rimuru, quickly tracing Gabiru's line of sight, immediately noticed that he was staring at Shizu's ample bosom. Wow, thought Gabiru. Gabiru then proceeded to make the most unnecessary comment of all time. A few seconds went by as Rimuru tried to process what he just heard and witnessed. Gabiru, you perverted piece of shish. Immediately feeling his temper flare up, Rimuru quickly refrained himself from any sudden moves. Yes, this was all to ensure the timeline. To ensure that he could predict his enemies. His harsher treatment of his subordinates is to ensure that they are stronger, not that he has any grudges against them or anything. Giving Gabiru the stank eye, he immediately used universal perception to search for Gobta. Good, he and Benimaru were nearly back. When he arrived, he would give Gobta a large amount of motivation. Gabiru, the lizard man in question, had already turned around, squatted in the middle of the road, and started talking to his subordinates. He felt his instincts flare up in danger, yet when he turned around, all he saw was the platinum blue-haired Majin glaring at him. What? I didn't do anything wrong. I am Gabiru, the one and only amazing lizard man. There's no way she got pissed because of my performance. Perhaps this is how she shows her interest. Rimuru's glare only intensified at these thoughts. His teeth and mouth held shut with all his might. Gabiru, just because you were my subordinate before doesn't mean you won't suffer now. You are going on a massive training spree later. I will tell Hakiro to go extremely hard on you. Oh, and I am going to ban your ability usage, your skill usage, and you can only use one leg to stand on and fight. Don't worry, this will all be for your own good. Lord Rimuru, I'm here. The hobgoblin Gobta had appeared. Rimuru immediately turned around to greet him. Gobta-kun perfect timing said Rimuru, giving him a beautiful smile that did not reach his eyes. Benimaru, accurately reading the look on Rimuru's face, realized that someone, or something, was going to suffer. May the voice of the world have mercy on your soul, he thought, a single drop of sweat sliding down the side of his head. Ah, what is it? Only Gobta seemed unaware of his plight, and of the plight of the lizardmen in front of him. Rimuru then changed to using thought communication. Gobta, you will fight this lizard man. Beat his ass. If you succeed, I will give you a special weapon. If you fail, I will force feed you Xian's cooking every meal every day for the next 4 months. You better win. Whaat. Lord Rimuru, you will win, or else. Master, I do not believe that being this sadistic is healthy. Rimuru, you really are starting to sound like Sister Velzard. Please don't do this to me in the future, begged Veldora. Don't worry, guys, this is all for the sake of my subordinates. Strengthen them with tough love. So you won't do this to me. No comment. Rimuru. Needless to say, Gobta won. As you may already know, Lord Rimuru, the orcs number 200,000, with the main army marching north along the river, said Soe before continuing. Based on the movements of both the main army and a displacement further west, it seems that the orcs plan on regrouping at the marshes. That would belong to the lizardmen's territory, added Rigurd. It seems that they are planning on attacking the lizardmen, but for what reason? Seated at the meeting table in the grand hall of the town hall, Rimuru and many of his close subordinates were seated, discussing current events. Of course, the event in question would be the invasion of the orc army, led by the orc lord. Yet none of Rimuru's subordinates knew that it was an orc lord leading the charge, albeit some speculated. The orcs would not attack so randomly and without any purpose. If instinct is not the only driving force, it can be safe to say that someone or something is backing them, added Kaijin. Many of Rimuru's subordinates then gazed at him, indirectly asking if Rimuru had the answer. Rimuru, for his part, felt happy that his subordinates were relying on him, yet he knew that they could not become too reliant on him. As such, he pretended to not completely know. He couldn't always give them the answer now, could he? I have a rough idea. Rimuru started. Benimaru, originally, a Majin by the name of Gelmid wanted to name you, correct? That is the case, my lord, the red-haired Kijin responded. That goes the same for your late elder brother, Rigyur. Except that Gelmid actually named him. Indeed, my lord, respond the hobgoblin. Setting his chin in the palm of his hand, Rimuru pretended to ponder. Going by that line of reasoning, the lizard man Gabaru also had a name, which is usually unheard of. So why would a Majin go around and name inhabitants of the Jura forest so willy-nilly? And the timing is also so coincidental. Which brings us to my suspicion. An orc lord, with Gelmid backing them, said Benimaru, picking up from where Rimuru left off. The unique monster that only appears every few centuries or so. But it's only a suspicion. What I still don't understand is why monsters are being named. Naming monsters strengthen individual monsters, but don't strengthen the collective race, even if orcs are ravenous and devour everything in their path. Benimaru immediately had a realization. Wait, orcs are ravenous, and eat a lot. Soe, you investigated our village, were there any corpses? None, answered Soe. Then it all makes sense, declared the future member of the strongest trio of Tempest, slamming his fist on the table. Their goal is to strengthen the Orc Lord, or whoever is leading the orcs. Since orcs are ravenous, their leader would obviously be the most ravenous of them all. And the feast would be the corpses of our brethren, or other races of the Jura forest, which also serves as their rations for their army. By killing and eating more powerful monsters, wouldn't any monster gain at least some strength? The rest of the group agreed quickly, with Hikuro making the last connection. If that's truly the case, then naming all those monsters would make sense. A named monster is drastically more powerful than an unnamed one. In other words, the named monsters are supposed to be more nutritious food for their leader. A wave of both apprehension and anger filled the room. After all, coming to the realization that the enemy only treated you as their dinner would insult any Majin's pride. It was also an insult to eat corpses, as their remains could no longer be buried. But then again, the unspoken law of the survival of the fittest came into play. The strongest dictates the fate of the weak. Rimuru, on the other hand, was surprised that Benimaru had quickly made that deduction based on his hints. Wow, Benimaru is already starting to fit the role of my right hand again. Why is it happening so much faster? Seal, do you know? Seal, not wanting to reveal her responsibility related to Benimaru, memories, gave Rimuru an excuse. Perhaps it's due to the bond created by naming them, Master. You have memories of their future selves, and they in turn try to better themselves to meet your expectations. Their names represent their future, and your past. So perhaps they are subconsciously developing as they would have, albeit at a much faster pace. Huh, well, what do you know? Benimaru really is reliable, in both timelines, though he is wrong about the collective race part. Ranga being the perfect example of an exception to that rule, the other being certain primordial demons. But then again, maybe it's because of me that evolution occurred in that manner. Rimuru subconsciously smiled. His thoughts were then interrupted by Soe. Lord Rimuru, we have a unexpected visitor. Who is it? Asked Rimuru, fully knowing that it was Trainee. It's a dryad, she is requesting an audience with you, Lord Rimuru. Rigurd, off to the side, stated his thoughts out loud. It's been several decades since we last saw a dryad. I wonder why one would suddenly pop out now. Unless the situation in the forest really is that severe. Rimuru, making note of his subordinate's growth, instructed Soe to invite the dryad in. A sudden gust of wind immediately followed Rimuru's instructions. It was followed by a single small column of light green light at the center of the table. Xian and Shuna immediately moved protectively in front of their lord, despite knowing full well that he could handle himself. Soe followed shortly thereafter. The column of light expanded, as within it bloomed a flower with a purple bud. The bud then expanded, turning into several vines. Finally, in a quick flash of pinkish light, the entire plant disappeared, leaving behind a light green-haired woman standing on the table. She wore a white and green dress, her long hair cascading down her back. Several pieces of red jewelry were obvious when contrasted with the rest of her attire. Immediately after appearing, she started to speak in a respectful manner. Greetings, ruler of monsters, and all those who are loyal to him. Please pardon my unannounced visit. I am a dryad of the forest of Jura, please call me Trainee. It is a pleasure to meet you. Rimuru spoke up immediately once Trainee had finished talking. My name is Rimuru Tempest, and it is a pleasure to meet you as well. He said in a dignified tone. May I ask why you have decided to visit us today? I wish to request a favor from you, Rimuru Tempest, ruler of monsters. Trainee responded in a dignified manner. Sensing that Rimuru was no stranger to politics and negotiations, Trainee opted to get straight to the point. Please help us defeat the Orc Lord. she finished, holding her hand out to Rimuru, before gently floating down from the table to the floor. A moment of silence followed her request, seeing as her words had just confirmed the existence of an orc lord. Before Rimuru could speak up, however, Benimaru once more proved himself as a capable growing leader. Some would even be surprised that he once had a hot-headed persona. Yet this was always the case. Benimaru had always been a deductive person. It was his temper that prevented him from thinking clearly and rationally, a fact that still had not changed. Defeating the Orc Lord is a very large request, answered Benimaru, standing up behind Rimuru, putting one hand on his waist. His eyes narrowed with slight suspicion. And although I must thank you for confirming our suspicions, I must ask your reason for coming to us. The hobgoblins are not the most powerful race in the Great Jura Forest. Benimaru had asked this question, yet deep down he already knew the answer. It had to be related to his new master, Rimuru Tempest. After all, not just any Majin could name multiple races and make them ally with one another willingly. Trainee smiled, noticing both the capability of Rimuru in front of her, as well as the subordinates behind him. Great things would be accomplished by the Majin in front of her. All that remained to be seen was when these changes would occur. Yes, it is true, the hobgoblins are not the most powerful race. Trainee answered, yet this village contains not only hobgoblins, but also Kijin and an evolved form of direwolves, if I am not mistaken. As for how I know, well, I am a dryad, and dryads have knowledge of essentially everything that occurs in this forest. That goes the same for the Orc Lord, as well as a certain someone's blessing. Once she finished talking, she eyed Rimuru, checking to see if he had any reaction to her words. The same went for Rimuru's subordinates, who were also curious about this blessing. Rimuru smiled. It seems that even that could not be hidden from the dryads. Rimuru announced, confirming Trainee's words. The blessing of the storm dragon is quite powerful, but I don't really want to get into the details now. Rimuru ignored the various looks of surprise, shock and intrigue from his subordinates before continuing on. That being said, we still need more information before we make our decision. So, Lady Trainee, could we receive more information? Trainee's smile widened. Of course, Lord of Monsters, Rimuru Tempest. Trainee's ethereal hand slowly descended, delicately picking up one of the many chips available on the table in front of her. Quickly turning her hand, she faced the chip towards her as she slowly brought it towards her mouth. Chomp crunch munch, a satisfied smile on her face, she then reached for another one. The process then repeated itself. Over and over again. Rimuru, ignoring Trainee's obvious addiction to potato chips, prompted the conversation forward. So, what do you all believe the goals of the orcs are? Granted, it's to gather strength and eat the named ones of the forest, but what else? Why are they so hyper-focused on consuming things? If I may interrupt, Lord of Monsters, announced Trainee, her face contorted into a look of disgust. Every orc lord has a unique skill called Starved, with its influence reaching all those that serve under him. Those affected by the skill devour all in sight, absorbing the strength and ability of those consumed. She then opened her eyes and gazed at those around the table, before continuing. In other words, whatever they eat will cause them to evolve, making the entire army stronger, faster, depending on their diet. In return for this skill, the orcs develop an insatiable hunger, and continue to march in an endless search to satisfy it. Rimuru kept his expression level and neutral, judging to see how his subordinates would react. Many wore the same neutral and level expression, with a few grimacing in disgust. It was to be expected, as Trainee had just confirmed their suspicions, albeit with more information about the cause of the issue. So, if the orcs ate a lizard man, would all members of the orc race gain the ability to swim as fast as them? Asked Shuna, participating in the conversation for the first time. Trainee nodded, sipping at her tea with a face full of contemplation. Great, so if we are to fight against them, then we have to ensure that the orcs do not eat any of our allies, or we risk making the fight much more difficult, mumbled Benimaru. Huh, thought Rimuru, making a quick observation during the short lull in conversation. Benimaru didn't say that we could not have any casualties, just that the orcs could not eat any allies. Looks like his tactical mind is showing itself once more. We have also recently confirmed that a Majin by the name of Gelmid is involved with the appearance of the Orc Lord, said Trainee, putting down her cup of tea. Lord of Monsters, please do not overlook him, as he is a subordinate of a demon lord. Then, I believe we may have to get involved, announced Rimuru, quickly using his political and charismatic persona. An orc lord will no doubt target us, seeing as how we have Tempest Wolves, Kijin, and Imogen with the Storm Crest. If a demon lord is eyeing the Jura forest, well that's honestly fine. However, trying to control the Jura forest through the orc lord makes me want to puke. Rimuru then eyed all those around him. Are you all with me? He asked. He was greeted with several nods of agreement, and a few jumps of excitement from the more battle-crazy individuals. Very well. Then, Miss Trainee, I hereby accept. A sudden knock at the door interrupted the final verbal agreement between the two parties. It was followed by the slow creaking of the hinge. As all eyes went to the door, a raven black hair woman with scars below her left eye slowly peeked through the now open door. Story continues below. Did I miss anything, Rimuru-san? Asked Shizu, before looking at all those in front of her. Her eyes widened comically when she spotted Trainee. Wait, is that a dryad? Rimuru chuckled. Perfect timing, Shizu. Imogen with a smiling clown mask was walking through the moonlit forest, planning to meet up with another masked Majin with a plague doctor's mask. He seemed to be walking leisurely and with no care in the world. Underneath the mask, however, the Majin's face was contorted into a frown. The plan is going well, but why do I have this sense of apprehension? I have manipulated the lizardmen to make the fall of their tribe quicker, and the other pawns are all in position. All we need is the orc lord to eat the races, evolve into the orc disaster, and voila. The Majin paused, as the hair on his neck tingled. He felt like he was being watched by someone, or something. He quickly turned around. Nothing. He looked to his right and left. Nothing. He looked up. Still nothing. Clayman, I hope you know what we are getting into. I just can't shake the feeling that this is going to go horribly wrong, if not now then later down the road, damn it. The Majin continued walking through the forest, unaware of an invisible figure with calculating red eyes observing his every move. There are no abnormalities with the current timeline, Master. Besides minor differences such as different footsteps here and varying degrees of apprehension there, all is set to remain the same. Thank you for the report, Seal. If anything abnormal occurs, can I leave it to you to resolve? As you wish, Master. Rimuru, wearing a casual white shirt and black pants, was currently listening to Ciel's reports on the situation at large. She had split herself into multiple parallel existence bodies and spread across the continent, analyzing the flow of which things are going. Her analysis indicated that the flow of events was nearly the exact same as before. It seems that Soe is done meeting with the chieftain. Very well, tell him to keep a close eye on both the chieftain and his daughter. We already know what Gabiru intends to do, thanks to Laplace's manipulation. But also tell him to watch over them, and make sure they don't die. Opening square bracket quote ... Master. Yay, Seal, shouldn't you be the one to tell him? They do not know of my existence as of yet. A pause. Damn it, it's a habit at this point. Don't worry about it, Master. Rimuru grimaced, slapping himself on the forehead while mentally berating himself again for such a slip-up, as Seal tried to comfort him. Lord Rimuru. Story continues below. Rimuru turned around, coming face to face with Benimaru. Ah, Benimaru, do you have any issues? Or any requests for the war? The young Kijin shook his head. No, Lord Rimuru. I just received a message from Soe telling me that negotiations went well with the lizardmen, and that we would meet them in 7 days' time. I wanted to discuss our plan of action. Very well, we will do just that tomorrow. I just want to give everyone some time to process everything. Understood, my lord. They stood in silence, Rimuru contemplating how he should act and planning for future events. Should he try to limit the casualties of the orc army? But that could decrease his reputation with the lizardmen and Kijin. Not to mention that the butterfly effect may end up screwing things up through that one little action. Benimaru, on the other hand, felt conflicted. The visions he had seen, the names of people he had yet to meet, it was too much for him. He wanted to know more. Especially Hinata Sakaguchi. Her face was blurry, but just the mere glimpse of that memory sent shivers down his spine. He stood no chance against her, not even with the power granted by his lord. And that worried him. Lord Rimuru, if I may, started the Kijin, wanting to confide with his new lord. Alas, fate had other ideas. Rimuru-san, there you are, interrupted a voice. The two looked to their left to see Shizu Izawa running towards them, waving her hand. It seemed like she wanted to talk to Rimuru about something. Shizu came to a stop before them, suddenly realizing that Benimaru was standing there as well. Ah, Sir Benimaru, I didn't realize you were there. Did I interrupt something? Asked Shizu, her voice full of concern and worry. Please, just call me Benimaru. I am Lord Rimuru's subordinate. And seeing that my lord treats you as his equal, there is no need to add titles before my name. Benimaru responded professionally. As for our conversation, it was merely banter, nothing extremely important. Rimuru, catching on to what Benimaru was hinting at, wondered if he should have another private conversation with him later. So, Benimaru, do you want to continue this conversation later? He asked. Benimaru shook his head, before smiling wryly, shaking off the feeling of discomfort. It may simply be a bit of paranoia before the coming battle with the orcs, but it is a topic that can be delayed for quite some time. I shall leave you and Lady Shizu alone, as I can see that she wishes to speak with you. See you tomorrow, my lord. Finishing his sentences, Benimaru turned and left, leaving Shizu and Rimuru alone in the moonlit forest. Rimuru, somewhat reluctant to leave Benimaru by himself, wanted to go after him. It is not necessary, master. I shall take care of it. Rimuru immediately felt Seal leave his psyche. He wasn't sure what she would do, as Seal was always more of a pragmatist over a psychiatrist, but he would trust her. She was his eternal partner, after all. Rimuru-san, I'm sorry for interrupting the conversation. Rimuru turned to the apologizing Shizu, who had clearly seen his facial expression. Story continues below. It's fine, don't worry about it. He immediately replied, attempting to comfort her. It seemed to work. He continued soon after. So, what do you want to talk about? Shizu, feeling more confident after Rimuru gave her the go-ahead, started to ask for some more details about the meeting. So, is there anything important that I missed? Asides from the Orc Lord, that is. Nothing else, Shizu. Just Orc Lord, and trainee's request to help deal with it. Simple politics. At these words, Shizu's face contorted a bit, and her smile turned into a frown. I hate that word, politics. Rimuru raised an eyebrow. He had an idea as to why, but didn't know her full story when it came to politics. Even if she is a hero. Why? Rimuru prompted. Every time I hear the word politics, I think of those old geezers who just want to manipulate you to get their chores done, while they sit and watch with those creepy stares. Shizu shivered, before continuing. The Western nations are full of those people, corrupted people. Nobles and politicians that just bicker all the time, unless the demon lords do something to actually get them to agree on action over inaction. Indeed. Thought Rimuru. That's the whole point of Guy's system of demon lord oppression. Rule through fear. But I rather rule through manipulation and relationships. That being said, do you have any names? Rimuru asked Shizu, rather innocently, whilst planning to brutally murder anyone involved. Shizu was someone that he wanted to protect, after all. Seems like he has become much more sadistic too. Perhaps he really had been influenced by his friends. After all, I'll commit those names to memory. Even if they were useful in the past. I'll punish them before making use of them, if they have any use, that is. Shizu looked upwards, digging through her memory. There's a Duke of Ingrassia that was less than pleasant. A nobleman of Blumend, and someone with fire magic that I suspect is a member of the 7 celestial sages, but her words were interrupted when she felt severe killing intent to her right, shocking her so greatly that she immediately whipped around to face that direction. However, all she found was Rimuru smiling like an angel. Rimuru-san. Rimuru blinked, and continued to smile, as sparkles blinked in and out of existence all around him. Yes. Did you just, whatever do you mean Tilda? Shizu eyed Rimuru suspiciously, but Rimuru maintained the angelic smile he had. She eventually relented and sighed, before deciding to be truthful about her worries. Honestly, I really wanted to talk about our next steps. Especially what my role would be in the upcoming war. As she said these words, she discreetly watched as Rimuru's smile faded, eventually being replaced by a grimace. Shizu, I don't think you should get involved in the war with the Orc Lord. The two made eye contact. What followed surprised Rimuru. Shizu smiled, before then turning to look towards the ground. I figured as much. As of this moment, I am quite weak. You could even argue that I am crippled. Slowly starting to learn the basics again. She looked down at the many calluses in her hands. Even despite all the effort I put in, complete recovery seemed so far off. Shizu hadn't just been standing around while time passed and events occurred. She had been busy getting herself back into shape, strengthening her weakened muscles and honing her instincts and reaction time, all of which were damaged thanks to Ifrit's takeover. Shizu, don't self-depreciate yourself. You are strong, in more ways than one. And you will eventually get back the strength you once had. It just takes a while to recover from losing and gaining spirits. Rimuru countered Shizu's words. Her recovery could be even faster if I didn't decide to keep her out of future events. Rimuru thought, wincing. And it was true. Rimuru could easily help Shizu recovered at breakneck speed. However, he decided not to, for 2 reasons. The first being that he wanted to have an excuse to keep Shizu out of future large events, to ensure that events occurred as he predicted. The other, less important reason, was because he wanted Shizu to pride herself in her skills and technique. Just as he had learned to hold pride in his own strength, he wanted Shizu to have pride as well. Not an unhealthy amount, but enough to have a large amount of self-esteem. Because Shizu seemed to not have any self-esteem at the moment. Not that he could tell her any of this. Seems like Guy rubbed off on me too, he thought. Thank you, Rimuru-san. I really appreciate it, said Shizu in a soft voice. She then turned to gaze at the stars. Her raven black hair reflected the gentle rays of moonlight, as her expression turned pensive. Yet to Rimuru, it looked regretful. Not full of pain, nor full of agony. Simple regret, as if she was lamenting the fact that she could not stand strong and face the brutal world in which she now lived in. Rimuru, already feeling slightly guilty for manipulating her once more, felt saddened just by looking at her. Watching as the amazing and wonderful woman, the first human he had truly met in this world, slowly descend into sadness and despair, felt horrible. He had brought her peace in the last timeline, but was only now realizing how unsatisfied he was with that outcome. Despite everything that was thrown at you, Shizu, you always tried to move forwards. Eventually, you died with a smile on your face, happy that your students had happy endings. But you didn't have one. Not a true happy ending. Dying before you could ever see the beautiful side of this world. The wonderful side of this world. Which is why, Shizu, Rimuru's voice rang out, calm and firm. Shizu turned to look at him again, eyes slightly widening at both the expression he was wearing and his change of tone. Her eyes met his. Firm golden irises met shocked black ones. Rimuru continued, when everything is dealt with, when it's all sorted out, I promise you that I will show you how this cruel and ruthless world can truly be beautiful. He watched as her eyes widened. As her breath hitched, perhaps she was shocked that he had hit the nail on the head. Perhaps she was surprised that he had managed to read her so well. Because Shizu had believed that the world was cruel, ruthless, and bloody. That the world she now lived in was horrible, even if some people she met were kind. She knew that, perhaps, she had fallen in love with Rimuru. She felt that she never wanted to leave his side. Out of duty, out of attraction, even she didn't know the answer. But what she knew for sure, was that Rimuru was not joking. That there was a beautiful side to the world that did nothing but hurt her. And, just because he had said so, she believed it. Her mouth curved into a smile. A grateful and beautiful one. Full of both hope and sadness. And faith. Faith that Rimuru, possibly the most important person in her life at that moment, was right. I look forward to it, Rimuru. To be continued.